Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, where we seek not to conform to the world, but to be transformed by God. Everyone is still talking about the Trayvon Martin case, and as I promised you last week, we're going to continue this conversation, but we want to talk about the legalities. Many of you have reached out to me on Facebook, on Twitter, when I've been walking down the street. You want to know how this exoneration happened. Well, we're going to talk about it because nothing in the world I have found, and there is nothing ever that does not make sense. I'll tell you what, you just don't have all the pieces. And so we've come together with some facts about this case, about George Zimmerman, about Trayvon Martin that you perhaps do not know. You don't want to miss this edition of the Santita Jackson Show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about Trayvon Martin. You know, whenever I hear people say that did not make sense, I say, oh no, everything in life makes sense. God is the master of logic. God doesn't miss anything. We do. We don't have all the pieces. So let's gather up some of these pieces. I've got lots of papers on the table because I've been following the Trayvon Martin case really since the beginning. I go to local papers when I first hear of a story. Why? Because the local papers give you the truest first shot of something that has happened. Things dissipate by the time they go national and international. But when you get the first story, you might not ever hear it again, but at least you've read it the first time. So let's talk about these things about Trayvon Martin. I'm a big fan of Think Progress, which is a wonderful online magazine. And they gathered something called, it's like 20 points, what everyone should know about Trayvon Martin. This baby's life was too short, 1995 to 2012. And in fact, many of us will be in Washington for the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington from August 28, 1963. Well, August 24th, 2013, we will be in Washington. And I'm sure, as I'm seeing, as you're hearing, that Trayvon Martin's death has been an Emmett Till moment for us. We are moving to Washington because we want to establish the kingdom of God right here on earth. So, Dr. Sharon Gale Miller, you are a physician, of course, and you are the mother of 3 sons. You want everyone to know that first.
Yes.
Davon Darby, law student, a press secretary for Congressman John Conyers, and of course, noted civil rights attorney, family law attorney, attorney extraordinaire. Of course,
so
attorney.
So
no,
kind.
it's true. Attorney Linda Bernard.
You.
I mean, you're brilliant. You're absolutely brilliant. And of course, we have a new member of our family. You're a member of the family now. Attorney Nahib Ayad. Of course, you are from the Arab American Civil Rights League, and he is on the Legal Redress Committee of the NAACP. And of course, Dawood Waleed, my honey bun. I just love him. The father, really, one of the leaders in the Muslim community in the United States, a real bridge between the Arab American community and the African American community. You're also the father of 2 sons, 9 and 12. Think about their ages when we need to have these conversations with these boys. But let me get to you. I'm going to start with the attorneys first so that we can establish some facts here. Because there's so much about this. You know, I don't understand going to court, right? I really don't. So a lot of the legal maneuverings in this case, I really did not get. What is admissible? What's not admissible? Now, I think that we have to be clear. There's a court of law and there's a court of public opinion. And in the court of public opinion, Trayvon Martin surely has been tried. We see him as someone who was high on marijuana, who was a thug, who had a great, a gold grill. He was a child and was having a lot of fun. But he was also known as Rachel Jeantel's best friend. She said, unlike the rest of the world, even some of George Zimmerman's lawyers, he didn't tease me. He thought that I was beautiful. He felt that I was worthy. And so he was my best friend and I was his. That's what didn't make it into court. as people have run roughshod over that child. And we have to give a special congratulations to her for winning college scholarships, and we want you to keep on going. Thank you, Tom Joyner, for helping her, but we want you to keep on going, Rachel Jontel, because we love you. We love you, and we thank God for you. You are worthy. You're beautiful. I have to say that as we go on here. But many of us do not know these so-called soft issues, Attorney Ayad, about Trayvon Martin, but we don't know, like the fact that George Zimmerman had 3 closed arrests, including battery against a police officer, domestic violence. I'm not trying to besmirch his name. What I'm trying to do is contextualize. You know, when we say that, when I hear juror B37 say that George was such a sweet guy, his heart was in the right place, sure, but it's clear he also had a lot of troubles.
Right.
I mean, help me out here. Why is that not admissible?
Well, it's so unfortunate that the trial became against the victim in this particular case, not against the person that's committed murder in George Zimmerman. All we heard was about Trayvon Martin, where they had drugs in his system, yet they didn't take a drug test of the individual that committed the murder.
Don't they
George
do that
Zimmerman.
generally in homicides?
And that's normally done in homicide situation. Yes. Absolutely. You want to see what the person's on. There was an expert from ABC that said he sounded as if he was drunk or under some kind of alcohol-related substance
on that night.
This individual has called the police 46 times in the last 10 years. 46 times. Imagine how outrageous that is, showing that he wants to be a cop. He is a wannabe cop. And let's talk about all the things that were fundamentally wrong in this case. Now, you said that, you know, there's always a reason, there's always a basis of things. To an individual, yes, the person that committed this murder, George Zimmerman, you know, he took it upon. Look at all these issues that came up. You have the stand your ground law. You have this individual racial profile. I'm speaking about all these issues that came at once from this Trayvon matter case. You have an individual. You have the witnesses. The police telling the witnesses, "No, you heard George Zimmerman basically screaming."
Where the police were correcting.
Right.
Would you please say that very clearly, because I want people to know that.
Yes, because the police basically were directing the investigation. Now, to the general public, they say, "Oh, the police do their job." No, they don't do their job all the time. We know, as civil rights advocates and leaders, we understand that it's so critically vital when you do an investigation that you take an investigation and you be very fair and open-ended and leveled on the evidence that you take. So if I'm a police officer and I'm telling a witness, basically, this is not who you heard. This is who we think we heard. We lead them into saying, "Oh, it was Zimmerman's cries for help, not what's it called." That's very, very important, because that is then taken and given to the prosecution and played out in the jury. Another issue in this particular case that, again, that's so fundamentally wrong, the jury diversity. You know, we're supposed to have a constitutional right to have a jury of our peers basically decide our innocence or guilt. This basically a jury was all white, okay, non-African American. So how was Trayvon to get some kind of justice under this set of circumstances?
Well, but Attorney, I heard that the jury of your peers is supposed to favor the defendant. It's supposed to be a jury of the defendant's peers. Is that right? That's not true?
But no, it's supposed to be of your peers, basically in the context of individuals that understand the community. And in this particular case, if I'm a racist individual and I get individuals that see Trayvon in a certain fashion, absolutely they're going to convict. So, I mean, it's so fundamentally wrong how you could say, I'm going to go pick a fight with someone. Okay, I'm going to start this fight and then I'm going to shoot this individual and claim self-defense. Self-defense, self-defense is not made for that particular purpose. Self-defense is when you get caught and when you get attacked and what have you. This person went and sought that out. There's a huge difference in those set of scenarios.
Attorney Bernard?
We all have selective hearing in the sense that the witnesses and so forth, the jury was told, of course, that the screams were Trayvon's and then, of course, that the screams were Zimmerman's. But the reality of the situation is that all the screaming stopped after the gun was fired.
Wait a minute, say that one more. Now hold it. What does that say to you?
The person was screaming. Wait a minute. Was killed at that point.
I'm not making light. And then You
So
get shot.
How could it possibly be Zimmerman? And there are no scream stop.
When did logic? I
at
mean,
that
it's
point.
like they threw logic out the window in this case.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So, hearing is selective. The jury heard what they wanted to hear based on looking at Zimmerman sitting there in a suit and a tie, and his parents sitting right behind him and looking so plaintive, and this young black man. I mean, he had to prove his innocence and not prove Zimmerman's guilt. So they proved. They actually proved, Santita, that this homicide was justifiable. That Zimmerman was protecting himself, and that he hadn't done anything wrong under stand your ground or in terms of self-defense.
But you know what else I think they did? Look,
It's
I have been
amazing.
very honest with my hips, today. That I have struggled with weight all of my life. But it's only being normal sized now that I understand how overweight people are perceived. I mean, particularly when you become really overweight. And people, of course, when we saw George Zimmerman as he entered the courtroom to get prepared for this battle, everybody commented on the fact that he had put on so much weight. Now, it seems like, do you think maybe he put on this weight? Because I see a whole
Looks like a big teddy
orchestration.
bear. So you'd have the teddy bear look.
Because he looks like, oh my goodness, he could not do this.
He's a teddy bear.
Is that a tactic?
Of course it is. All of it. And the way he dressed, the
I'm
way
not a
he
lawyer. I
handled
think that's
himself.
why Shakespeare might have been right. We gotta get rid of y'all.
Said that.
I'm not. Look,
But-
I'm
But-
a
but-
Christian. I am not going to espouse violence. But come on, y'all.
But in answer to your first question, the judge controls the courtroom totally.
Okay.
And what's let in, what's not let in, what's said, how. I mean, she ran the whole show. So just like they did with OJ and everything else. I mean, in that case, of course, they ruled against the defense 187 times
Well,
in
Johnny
terms of
Cochran
admissibility
was
on
a
evidence.
genius.
Right. And they did the same thing here. They ruled against the prosecution. She ruled against the prosecution all the time.
But see, you know, the point that you bring up, I mean, I just want to know from you, when I saw Sabrina Fulton, and I'm going to go to you as a physician and as a mother, because you would be called to court as an expert because you understand the body and all of that. But you always tell me, Dr. Sharon Miller, I'm the mother of 3 sons.
Yes.
When you heard Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mother, and she just walked in there to defend her baby.
Right.
When she said, no, that was my son. Now, mind you, Mrs. Zimmerman said the same thing. Where would you put the weight? I mean,
The emphasis of how much
Yeah, I
each of the
mean,
people weighed.
yeah, I mean, no, I mean, just where would you,
Or
I mean,
the-
whose opinion? Because it
Oh.
seems like
Son.
that
You
was,
said it's your son.
Um,
She says it's her son.
Well, I mean, obviously, as a mother, you love your son regardless. I mean, you love your children no matter what happens. You support them, but you do want to know the truth. And I think that obviously you have 2 mothers. They both love their son. They both love their children. They both are going to support their children, stand behind them. And they're at a total opposite position. I
One
mean,
says, "This was my son."
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a conflict. I mean, I tell people all the time, even Jeffrey Dahmer's mother loved him, and he ate people. So you're going to love your children.
Wow.
You're going to love your children. You love your children. You birthed them. You carried them
could
for
they
9
have been
months.
mistaken?
But you certainly can see when they do something wrong. I mean, you can't be so naive to your love that you're blinded. I mean, your child could have killed someone, and you need to accept that, and you need to own that, and you need to take responsibility. You need to help them.
Because it seems to me
But-
that's part of the problem with
Yeah.
them, because he's got these closed arrests. And
Yes.
hey, you know what? I am not here. And let me say this, because I've said this on Facebook.
Right.
I don't believe in passing hate around.
Right.
I don't believe it doesn't.
Right.
Love is the answer. God is the answer. Godliness is the answer.
Right.
But you know, when you're wrong, you need to be corrected.
Exactly.
I mean, because
Exactly.
God has rules too.
Right.
He does,
And I
God
think-
does not just say, you know, whatever you do is going to be fine.
Right.
Now, I would think that Sabrina Fulton, I said, well, I don't think she's wrong here. I think she hears her boy and these other witnesses who, as you point out, why do I
Sounded
want to call
like
you
a young
professor?
guy.
Because you're so professorial.
Yeah.
But Attorney Ayat,
Yes,
these other witnesses said, we heard a young
Young
boy
boy
screaming.
Screaming, right.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go to, because I know you all have children, but before I come back to you, and before I come to you, because I know you're going to be studying this and talking about it when you go back to law school in the fall, as a father, because, okay, they really tried to throw Tracy Martin under the bus.
Right.
Oh, well, he wasn't truthful. I mean, because I've heard Juror B37 talking. She gave no credibility to Trayvon Martin's parents. Stunning to me. Would you recognize your son or your sons if they were in distress?
100%. I could recognize any time that my sons would be under distress. I can hear the tone of their voice. It would be crystal clear to me.
So what do you think about them basically throwing out Tracy Martin's testimony?
They did.
Well,
they said, well, when you first heard it, you were not sure. I would think that he would be in shock.
Right.
You mean that I've been looking for my son for almost 24 hours. You tell me you can't find him. He was yards away from me. Then I find out that he's dead.
Exactly.
He's been shot. I would think
But
that
when you add to that, you add to the fact that he was talking to his friend on the phone. He said specifically that I'm being followed. I'm going this. He's following me. So at one time he actually ran away. So this person was already afraid. So common sense dictates that he would be the one that's screaming because he's the one that's afraid, and he's the one that basically has fear for his life. And I constantly think how this poor kid had to endure this. I mean, he was followed, he was pursued, basically, then he was grabbed and he was killed. And as a parent, I can't even visualize that. I'll probably stay up at night just hurting myself all night thinking about how this individual, these parents had to go through, vision how their son was yelling for help, And common sense as well dictates if I the one that has the gun, I'm not the one going to be screaming for help.
Right.
I'm equipped with a 9mm. I could really shoot you right in the head right now or in the heart as he did. He's not going to, Zimmerman ain't going to be screaming for help. It's going to be the person that's afraid because he doesn't have no weapon on him that's going to be killed.
But
well,
going back to what you said about Tracy
let me say
Martin.
this, the initial police report did not reflect that Zimmerman had been beaten up.
No.
Right.
And then, but also context is everything. This man called the police and reported a skinny black male, a suspicious skinny black male. Guess what? He was 7 to 9 years old.
Right.
Now, let me tell you,
Really?
as an attorney that practices a lot of criminal defense work, we have
Help
some of the
me.
only terrorism cases in the country that got dismissed and all. We've made history in this nation now. I could tell you that we have clients that because they want to hurt someone else, they'll do damage onto themselves.
Correct.
Whether have somebody punch them.
Women do it
I've
all
had
the
a
time.
client that had her sister bite her in her back to say that her husband
do it
did
all the
this.
time.
Are you kidding
and,
me?
Oh yeah,
With
they
some
do
black
it all
makeup,
the time.
I can make my eye look
So-
black and make it look like
right.
you hit me. And I'm crying and I
Right,
tear
yeah.
my blouse.
So if I'm-
tear the blouse. Oh, he did this to
Yeah.
me.
So if I'm George Zimmerman and I know the rules and I know I want to be a
And
police
your
officer and
dad-
I know
your
the
dad's a
standard ground
magistrate.
rules, after I just killed someone, desperate times call for desperate measure. Is it impossible for him to hit himself in the nose with a gun, hit his
fabricate
head
the
on the back of
evidence.
the cement, say that it was Trayvon that
what you
hit
do.
me in this particular fashion? And how, if that's the case, if someone is supposedly beating up on you for so long, you have a gun. I think just by showing the gun would
That's
has
enough.
anyone
That
sees
makes
and
them
stop and
back
say,
up.
oh, whoa, you have a gun.
You would start to
Oh,
scream.
they start to
makes
retreat.
sense.
Yeah.
They start
You're
to
with the
retreat.
gun.
You start to
You
retreat.
go.
Oh,
you
wait,
start
okay, all right,
screaming. And
yeah,
then
you're gonna jump
Why
right.
don't you
Davon?
shoot the gun off in a random direction, like a.
Well, then you'd be in
a
jail like Marissa Alexander.
Well,
Yeah.
no, probably not Zimmerman.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
no, he
Or-
wouldn't. He was going to get off anyway because buried
He never
in
even
that.
announced that he was part of Neighborhood Watch. He was just following. But he never even said, "I'm a Neighborhood Watch person." What are you doing?
But
No, he
other
never even said
neighbors,
that.
other neighbors complained about his aggressive tactics as a neighborhood watchman.
And he was resisted
See,
arrest
I'm just saying
before.
that in the case, when we.
He thought
This
he was
is stuff
wide
that's
at
in the
work.
public domain now. This is from the Miami Herald. This is from the Orlando Sentinel. This is from the New York Times. These are from all of these newspapers, and these articles were written in real time. But none of this was admissible in court.
It's all Wyatt Earp. He was Wyatt Earp.
And just like the judge, by the way, wouldn't even allow
Right.
the prosecution to use the term racial profiling. They could not
Why
use the
not?
word
Well,
the
racial
judge
or
controlled it.
race. They could only use the term profiling.
'Cause she
But,
wanted-
so this is basically scuttling the prosecution in terms of the motive of why Zimmerman followed Trayvon to begin with, because race. So the judge, by not allowing the use of the term racial or race
Correct.
with profiling, basically helped undermine the arguments of the
look,
prosecution.
no one put on a better defense than the prosecution. I'm sorry.
A better
Now
prosecution.
look, bless them. They were great. They
Prosecutors
were
were good.
great.
They were very
Every
good.
day after day after day, as I talk to people, look, because I'm no lawyer, I'm a layperson. But I said, no, wait a minute. They are doing a bang-up job for George Zimmerman's team, Davon Darby.
Well, remember, they didn't charge for the whole month. There was a murder, and they
40
never charged for a whole month
40 plus
until the
days.
outrage.
Is that odd?
Yes,
very
extremely
odd. That's
when
very
there's
odd.
been a
Would
death.
you connect that to
this-
his father having been a court officer, a magistrate?
it's
What
very,
is a magistrate
very,
anyway?
very-
Yeah, he's a judge. He's a judge. He
very
makes rulings
possible.
on matters of evidence and arraignments and so
Matters
forth and
of
so on.
evidence?
But let me just say this to this.
Wait a minute, matters
Yeah,
of evidence?
about, yeah, whether or not there's a
So
case
he-
against this person. But
So
let me just say,
he grew up with someone who knows
but
how to
it's not
game
just
the
that.
system.
But yeah, but it was okay for his father. When you are arrested, if you're arrested right here today, you could call your brother, who's an attorney, to come right here and be part of any interrogation of you by the police. You absolutely have a right to counsel once you've been identified as a suspect. So it was okay for his father to be there and even advise him as his lawyer, because you're not precluded because of your family relationship. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, they knew, and but more importantly than that, it was his father's influence as a judge and as a magistrate with those police officers. They know each other. They're in the code. They're within the code, the blue code. You know, well, the cops don't.
The mother was a court clerk.
Yeah, the 11th commandment: "Thou shalt not say anything against another police officer."
Boys
Now,
know.
you got to back up the police at all times. I mean, that's part of what they do professionally. And his dad and his mom were all in that group. They're in the circle.
So he was, like, we have children of the church.
Right.
He's a child of the court.
Right, he's a
Okay,
child of the
now
court.
you've heard us all talk about all of this, Davon, because she's a baby. And I know I say that with love and respect because I think having this intergenerational conversation I think is really important. What are you thinking? Because do you think you'll be studying this?
I'm hoping so.
Why?
I hope so. I'm pretty sure the textbooks that we're going to be buying in a couple of weeks won't have this case, but I'm hoping that my crim law professor is one that goes outside of the case book and says, get this case printed, and we talk about it. I just don't see how we cannot talk about this
Why?
this fall. Because it's here, it's important. It's important for a whole bunch of reasons.
Why? Give me
But
one or two.
I think it's important because, of course, outside of the criminal law aspect, I think ultimately it's important because in law schools where you generally have diversity, it can open up a good conversation about race. I think it's important, as she said, the father and the mother, all of the cops, they were in bed together. There's so many different aspects to this case. There's the whole jury selection. Why weren't some of we know why, possibly, we can all guess why some of the jurors, why weren't there different jurors, why weren't there more
Well,
Hispanics?
let's not guess. Let's state.
No, but-
Obviously, you
Yeah.
picked jurors. You didn't use the strikes that you could have used, or maybe you
Correct,
did.
yeah.
Well,
to-
but
you
they
could-
struck two black jurors,
Right, you
apparently,
used
who,
them to get rid of
who
them.
watched Fox News, where I work. Now, see,
But see, the prosecution thought they were going to be okay with those jurors because they were mothers.
crazy.
Because Sharon Gale, Dr. Miller, as a mother, if your son is killed, you're really going to be listening
No,
because this could be your
no.
kid.
No.
found it
If you
hard
view
to
the other
believe,
person as a
honestly.
human being,
Yeah,
Right.
racism
Because they
trumps
might
that
be
card.
that-
Racism trumps that card. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyone
yeah.
that-
I mean-
There were five mothers on this jury. I did find it hard to believe that they weren't just initially biased because a child had been killed. Personally, I know that I would have had to exempt myself from the jury because I would not have been able to honestly say that I would not have been biased because I have 3 sons. And if my son's buying Skittles and a juice and coming home and he dies, that's a real problem for me.
I think
But-
I
but-
would
but-
have
but-
been
but-
able
but-
to.
but-
But
but-
I-
but-
not
Initially,
if
though-
they see this boy. Not as a
I just
boy.
don't see how five
they
mothers.
see him as a man, a young man. I
look-
took
they-
umbrage with the fact that they kept referring to him as a young man. He's not
He was
a man.
17.
He's a child.
They
And he's been
looked at him
17
as
for-
a black person.
He's been 17 for 2.5 weeks.
Right.
Those
He was
five
functionally
mothers.
16.
Right.
Those
They-
five,
they was a
those
kid.
five
That's the
mothers
problem.
identified Zimmerman looked
With
more
Zimmerman.
like their son.
That's correct. I've
and
told
not
you
like
from the very
Trayvon.
beginning.
That's what
Well,
that,
that's
as
true.
mothers. That's really
So
what it
why
was.
are we avoiding not race? Why are we avoiding racism? I mean, why are we avoiding that topic? Really?
The judge avoided it.
The judge
So
avoided it. That's true.
And I'm
Why?
not
I
sure it
don't
would have
think
worked
we're
anyway.
avoiding
I mean, do you
No,
think
I
that
think
you
the
think
judge-
no, I'm just saying
With
as a
those
society,
women.
do you think that this is something in the court of law you hear that this man, that he even tracked a 7 to 9-year-old boy in the
That's correct.
community. I mean, this is still part of the record.
This guy's psycho.
Well, no. See, because I don't want to make people, unless you are legitimately, you have
Mental
a chemical
illness,
imbalance.
right.
How
I
can
don't
you
want to
change
give
the
people
psyche
that.
of 300 years. How can you?
No,
because
the judge.
Okay.
How do you do that? So
Right.
that's why we're avoiding racism. There's been a majority for 300 years, and there's been an oppressed minority and other oppressed minority.
Well, you sound like you're whining. Be quiet.
We
Well,
we came over here. They came over here. They were killing Native Americans, taking their stuff, ripping them off. They brought African Americans over here, and they've been oppressed in different ways all throughout the history of the country. So, how do you change 300 years of a psyche?
Well,
and now,
you
how
know-
can you complain?
Well, the
you all
justice
can vote.
system
You
is
can go to school and all this, that, and the other. So, what is there to complain about?
Well, I think even we have to look at a fundamental unfairness because, I've seen oppressed people become oppressors. I have to be very frank with you.
Israel.
Because I don't think that, well, no, I think and let me tell you something, knowing human beings, when people get a chance to wear that shoe, they're unfair too. So that's why that was the genius of Dr. King. That's the genius of Jesus. That's the genius of our religious teachings. They tell you that, you know what, you can step through the looking glass. We can demonize anyone.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, you can become what you condemn. That's why you have to ask God to clean out your heart. Because you will become that. And if you keep on living long enough, you will get an opportunity to be whatever you have taken exception with. If you, it's just the way life is.
So how do we change
But
it?
Santita, there's moral guilt and then there's legal guilt, and that's what we were talking about.
A moral culpability. I mean,
morally, clearly, he's guilty, and then there was this legal context.
So how did legally he get? I mean,
Let me
the
answer the question.
judge and the jury.
I've got less than a minute here.
The question is to the judge why the judge probably
judge and the jury.
omitted the racial aspect of it is because
Wouldn't matter.
he wanted to protect the decision from appeal. Because if you
Correct.
bring in the racial issue, he can say I was prejudiced under the court rules, under that state and what have you, saying that you allowed evidence to prejudice me. I don't care if it's relevant evidence, it's prejudicial. You should have never done that. Reverse the decision had he been found guilty. That said, however, if the Attorney General and the Justice Department brings a federal criminal statute for hate crime, then you can bring in the
That's not likely.
racial angle of it and say he did this, he was racial profiling because he's African American, so on and so
Matthew
on.
Shepard Act.
Yes.
But that's not likely, and you know that
Well-
because there just aren't enough nexuses. There aren't enough points where we can actually show racism to get them involved, and that's what the Justice Department is saying quietly. As you
Well, I
know.
don't think they have
know-
ruled on that yet, but
They haven't
I,
ruled.
yeah,
They're
I-
looking
I,
into
I
it.
feel
Well, we'll
strongly
see
that
if
they
they-
should.
I
Civil
hope they
suit very
do.
quickly?
I agree. I agree.
Okay, well, I tell you what, I want to hear from you on the Santita Jackson fan page. I want to hear from you at my Twitter handle. You're proud of me, Davon, at Santita J. Let's continue this conversation. What do you think we should do? And will you be in Washington, August 24th, 2013, the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington? There's a lot to discuss. You lost your voting rights, and guess what? Even if someone pursues you, if you fight back, you're at fault. Unbelievable. Our prayers go out to all of these families because everybody's hurting. It's time for the healing. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching this edition of the Santita Jackson Show.